Hello and welcome back to What I Think I Know with your host, Dan Briantino. Here's a couple pictures that you might find a little disturbing. I have cropped them so you don't have to see the real bad stuff. But here you go. Oh! Boy, oh boy, sorry you have to see that one. Here's the other one. Angry motherfucker, isn't he? Angry. Well, that's a guy we all know and love, Alex Pretti. And I have another photo to show you, a little less scary, but in some ways a little more scary. The fella, or one of the many fellas, that Alex and Renee Good and all these people are protecting. I call him Captain Toothless. He is accused of throwing a baseball-sized rock at a school bus that ended up fracturing a third grader's skull. Now, I don't know if you've seen videos that have been on the internet in the past. You probably haven't. Your algorithm's probably a little more sane than mine is. But rocks, big objects, things like that, kill. Instantly, typically. Fortunately, this young boy has survived, as far as I know, to this point. But this is what the left is protecting. People who want to throw big boulders at school buses. If you think that's okay, please comment down below. Tell me why you think that's okay. And this next story I know is outside of our country. This is in Germany here. But there was a 25-year-old South Sudanese fella who grabbed hold of an 18-year-old German woman, said to her, "I'm taking you with me," and proceeded to jump in front of a oncoming subway train. They were both killed instantly, and the story is a little bit too quiet, I believe. So that's why I'm bringing it here. I think more people should hear about it. This is exactly what's going on in America, aside from the in front of a subway part. We have more on the subway train. The Irina Zarutska, it was a bus. But they're the same type of people. Now, Irina Zarutska, I will say, I believe he was born here in America. Generations back, he's been in America. But it's the same sort of thing. You're a criminal, you should stay in jail. Irina's killer had been released 14 times after some reasonably non-violent, but mostly violent crimes. He shouldn't have been on the streets. He was. Same with this Sudanese fella. He shouldn't have been allowed in the country. He should not have been on the streets, but he was. Same with this gentleman who threw a rock at a school bus. Shouldn't have been on the streets. But now there's a third grader with a fractured skull. Beautiful stuff. Welcome to America. Don't worry, we're trying to fix it. Unfortunately, people are fighting back, and I think the Democratic docket is what they're called, has actually just told us why they're in the country. Now, they are upset that Republicans passed a bill about the census. We want to get the counting of illegal aliens off the census. We want to know how many Americans there are, and I would think how many illegals there are as well, but let's make them separate. It makes more sense that way. Let's find out how many American citizens we have, how many, call them future American citizens, green card holders, visa holders, things like that, and how many people are just entirely illegal and should not be here in any way, shape, or form. I think it'd be a great thing to know all of that information, but the Democratic docket does not believe so. Here's an interesting post they made on X. House Republicans passed a blatantly unconstitutional bill to exclude non-citizens from being counted in the census and limit apportionment to solely citizens. If enacted, the legislation would likely buy GOP-dominated states more congressional seats. So if you don't know, the census we have every 10 years here in America counts the number of people in a place. And depending on that number of people, they get a certain amount of voice in Congress. Oh gosh, I've done this before. is it 426 seats in Congress? I can't remember. I did get it right the last time I said it, or maybe I was one off, 465 or 425. Maybe it is 466. No, it's not 466. Anywho, doesn't matter. Not super important. The important part is those seats are doled out to each location based on population. So if you have 25 people in your town and the town next door, or rather 25 people in your state and the state next door has 10 people, you get more seats than they do. You get a bigger voice than they do. Makes sense. More people, bigger voice. Sure, California has a lot of these seats, and Republicans still don't have a voice, but hey, that's who controls our state. So anyway, this Democracy Docket post seems like they are simply advocating for illegals to maybe not necessarily be voting, but at the very least, they want them counted so that Democrats have more power. Which means what Republicans and conspiracy theorists have been saying for years is 100% true and factual. That the reason they opened the borders and let everybody flood in here is to get more congressional seats and therefore more electoral votes. Thank you, Democracy Docket. A little bit of truth coming out of you. That's beautiful. I like it. I was talking to a fellow recently. Now, I'm not entirely sure on his immigration status, but he is a very Mexican person. Not that there's anything wrong with the Mexican people. Simply that he adheres to their kind of American culture, because the culture in Mexico is a little bit different from the culture of Mexican Americans. But he adheres to our kind of gangbanger culture out here. He just recently got his 4th DUI. And what he had to say when he was getting pulled over, he said he was, heading from one place to another, cruising down the road, saw the blues and twos behind him, and he said, "It was already gonna be my 4th DUI, so I didn't want another one." And he said after that, he put the pedal to the metal, tried to take off. He lost the race, obviously, and now is in big trouble. I just want to bring that up because that shows you the mentality of some people. Oh, it's already going to be my 4th DUI. He didn't say going to be. He said a lot of less literate stuff, but he said it's already going to be my 4th DUI, so I don't want to get another one, so I'll risk the lives of everybody around me in a high-speed chase with the police to try to stop this from happening. It's kind of the exact same thing the ICE protesters are doing. I don't care about anybody around me, but I do care about this rapist murderer here, and so I'm going to do anything to stop these law enforcement officers, these federal agents, from doing the job that more than half of the American population who voted for. And if you really don't think it's getting that bad, well, here is a fella that I think we could all trust. I don't think there's any person who could say no to Chris Hansen. Here he is.
We have seen an increase in illegal immigrants being caught in our stings across the country, and it seems today that we can't do a sting, whether we're in the South or the Midwest or West Coast or East Coast, without catching somebody who's in this country illegally.
So for what, 20 years he's been doing his, To Catch a Predator and shows like that, and just recently, now he can't seem to do an episode without catching an illegal. It's very interesting. I should think we should take note of that. And something that certainly doesn't help, we've talked about this before, is all the different colors in the spectrum being placed into the white category. Maduro, the Venezuelan ruler, dictator, the guy everybody said, no kings, about Trump, and then, hey, why are you arresting a dictator? When Maduro got arrested. Yeah, that guy. Clearly not a white man, but according to the police, he's white. Well, that's how he was classified anyway in his arrest, whatever you call it, portfolio kind of thing. And this is a very special graph, I think, is not going around quite enough. It should be on every news outlet everywhere, but a beautiful graph. This is the intake of fentanyl in our country, or rather, not the intake, but the actual deaths from fentanyl in our country. You can see right at the tail end of 2024, it takes a nosedive. I don't know any other way to describe that than it looks like it's on its way to being finished entirely. I certainly don't want to promote any drug use, but if you are a drug user, you're in special times now. No more death. I know quite a few people who passed away from simply taking a Xanax pill. Things that, when I was growing up, was unheard of. I knew a lot of people who used those things, and they would always say, oh yeah, if you take too much, oh, the worst thing that happens is you black out and you can't remember, which arguably is not a great thing to be doing. But the folks I know, and this is actually, there's two people that I know personally who passed away from fentanyl overdose in Xanax pills, and they took one pill. So going from, oh, you could take two pills and all you'll do is black out, to take one and you're dead. That's a significant difference. Now, again, don't do drugs, especially not things like Xanax. If you want to do drugs, grab a beer. Beer is great. Now, don't overdrink. Don't be drinking every single day. But yeah, life doesn't need all those extra drugs. And here's a story from what the world seems to think is the best immigrant in America. She married her brother to get her immigration papers. She's said countless times, Somalia first, we will support you. And she defends the Somali scammers running their daycares. It's none other than Ilhan Omar. It just boggles my mind that people think, like, oh, let's take in all these people from a country that's only known for piracy, and they should do fine over here. Well, little did we know they have clan wars and stuff like that. They're still basically tribal. So what are you going to do? Well, you know what they're going to do? They're going to use the sum total of their average 68 IQ, and they're going to do piracy here. Oh, what a surprise. Now, the Great Lakes are a little bit too cold for their aquatic style piracy, so they do get a little bit more technical. Now, if you think a 68 IQ has figured out how to run all these daycares and whatnot, yeah, you're definitely wrong. But I know a Somalian who's in government who could easily assist all these people to get started. Oh, Ilhan Omar. Perfect candidate. Now, by now, you've probably heard that she was having some press conference where she was saying, oh, ICE needs to stop, we need to impeach Kristi Noem. And as she says that, she says, we need to impeach Kristi Noem. And then a fella stands up from exactly where she looked and sprays her with a syringe of fluid. He then kind of slowly walks to the side after saying something I can't remember that's, I'm sure, not important, but it was about impeaching Kristi Noem. Like, you're not going to impeach her, or something like that. He steps off to the side, kind of gently. Another guy gives him a gentle hug. They both kind of like, here, let's sit down really quick. And then instead of, well, that was a syringe, instead of Ilhan Omar thinking, well, that was a syringe of fluid that was just sprayed on me. Could this be acid or anthrax or AIDS virus or something along those lines? Well, she goes, I'll fight you, and takes a couple steps toward the attacker until the fella gives him a gentle bear hug. And, well, she just goes, oh, well, let's finish the press conference. I don't care if this perhaps deadly fluid is on me. In fact, I care so little about the deadly fluid that I'm going to go hug and handshake everybody who was at this meeting. That's an interesting strategy. If you think that fella had any ill intent, wouldn't you think, maybe I should change my clothes? Maybe I should wash my hands before shaking the hands and hugging all these people at the event? That'd be my first thought. My first thought would be, sweater off. Oh, the guy's walking away. Okay, sweater off. Throw that in the corner. Get me out of here. Let's go change my clothes. Maybe I'll come back if this doesn't start burning. And her response to people asking her just these very things was, I didn't do any of those things because I fear losing my dignity more than I fear losing my life. Something you coward losers will never understand. So F off. Oh, I'm sorry, but you lost your dignity a long, long time ago. Probably around the time that you married your brother. Well, apparently she knew the future because it ended up just being what the FBI says is a mixture of water and apple cider vinegar. It's an interesting pick there. Why apple cider vinegar? Which, technically is already mixed with water, so that might just be a redundant point. But they might have even diluted it further. But why apple cider vinegar? If you're attacking a Muslim, wouldn't you do like bacon grease? Or something that's not halal? Something that Muslims are not supposed to be touching? Because that's what I would do. Not that I ever would. I shouldn't have said that. I'm going to edit that out. I would never do anything like that to anybody of any persuasion or opinion. But wouldn't you expect an attacker to do something a little more damaging than vinegar? He literally stands up in the middle of this conference thing, sprays her, takes a couple steps to the side, and then gets arrested. That is a bizarre situation. I'll play the video for you here.
That's for Congresswoman Omar's staff who's here.
And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem must resign or face impeachment.
Yeah, that's a weird situation there. There was two angles there. We've got, three technically. I've got that beginning angle where it shows the camera like zoomed in on this fella. He looks like he's hammered. He looks like that Fiji bottle is full of vodka, not water.
And round of applause for Congresswoman Omar's staff who's here.
And then the second angle, of course, is from behind this fella. You can see, and I'll do a clip in a second of a little bit of a slow motion, but you can see she mentions Kristi Noem, and then he immediately stands up, sprays her, and steps off to the side. It doesn't look like he's trying to run, like my first instinct after attacking somebody would be, and again, would never attack anybody in any way, shape, or form. But if I were to put myself in the shoes of an attacker, wouldn't you think, okay, attack, get out? That would kind of be the order of things to do them. Or the order to do things in, right? Attack, get out. But he just kind of gingerly steps to the side. Or maybe he really was drunk and just not thinking. And then, of course, the angle from the right-hand side of Ilhan, where you could see her, I'll fight you. I'm sorry, that guy had to be at least 200 pounds, and you can't be more than $130, $140. What do you think you're going to do? Also, what fighting stance is that? Did you learn that from the clans in Somalia? I would suggest learning fighting from somebody else. Anywho, here is the slowed down clip. It's very curious. Now, this is all alleged, I would say, but does it not appear that she looks up, makes eye contact with this fella, kind of gives him a nod, and then looks away again?
must resign or face impeachment.
So I'm not saying that this was a setup. I'm not saying that this was all fake. So please do take this with a grain of salt. I think we'll find out in the future whether this is a Jussie Smollett type of falsified thing, or if this was real and this attacker was just the biggest moron the world has ever seen. Possibly even dumber than the Somalis. However, having said that, I think the stupidity of the whole situation does lead me to believe that the Somalis were the ones who planned it, because you got to be pretty dumb to plan something like that. And the jury's still out on this other part, but it's highly likely that this fella here is a big lib. Here's some pictures of him with his children, allegedly. Yeah, all that colored hair. I don't know, man. Things aren't looking good. Certainly doesn't look like a MAGA man to me. But who knows? Maybe MAGA is more trans-accepting than I thought. Now, if you want to look into this yourself, and I highly suggest you do, I highly suggest you look into anything I ever say and anything you ever hear on your own. Try to get to the facts, or at least the most factual information you can. If you can't find something that's super clearly factual, put it in a bin to the side and say, we'll find out about that later. Again, this is why I don't jump onto the internet and do things instantly. I would love to. Sometimes I have time to just make a quick video when things initially happen, but I don't think that is the proper way to do the news. I will say again, watch Anchorman 2. That tells you why I'm saying this, if you read in between the lines there. And last thing I have to say about this is that Disney has already come out and said that they're doing a Disney-style adaptation of this very event with Ilhan. Here is the movie cover they've proposed. Now, obviously, that's a joke. Disney, I have no viewers, so don't sue me. No one's watching this anyway. I wouldn't put it past them, though. That's exactly what they seem to be doing these days. Now, on to Jeffrey Epstein. I'm sure you're all itching to hear about it. But just like I said, I don't like to jump onto things too early. I like to give them a little time, let them marinate, do my own research, which I certainly haven't had time to do this week. I actually wrote this story, or this whole episode, a few days ago. I think it was the day that the Epstein stuff came out. So I haven't had enough time to look into it. I will tease for next week, let's see, my kind of favorite three, my top three things. Well, lots of stuff about Bill Gates. I think kind of perhaps most importantly, because we already know that he's a horrible, deviant type person, you know, the vaccines in Africa and all this sort of stuff. We already know all that stuff about him. We're just basically being proven correct through these things. But I want to add one thing to that. He apparently, again, allegedly, apparently, we don't know any of this for sure. We'll find out later, though. But apparently, he was doing pandemic simulations in 2017. So just a few years before the pandemic, he was, what would you say, practicing? That's what I would call it. Another kind of interesting thing. Now again, there could be more stuff to be found. There's 3.5 million pages, whatever. It's not paper, it's all electronic, but you could call them pages. That's an interesting theory of the day. Why does the internet have our, like, when you do a Word document, why is it sectioned to one piece of paper? Is it just like for printing purposes because you need to see where it's getting printed? Because if something's just built to stay on the internet forever, why not just do one giant long page? That's an interesting question there. But anywho, again, like I said, 3.5 million pages. So we don't know what's true, what's not true. You know, we've heard George H.W. Bush chopped off the foot of some kid or whatever. But we also know, prior to this release, we know that this person who accused George Bush Sr. of this was already discredited. He was a psychedelic mushrooms user, and I believe he was like on mushrooms at the time that he made this accusation. So he's pretty much been discredited. Now, I will say it's very possible that it is true, but I highly, highly doubt it. Something that I do think is the opposite of that, perhaps it's untrue, but I think it's probably darn true, is that pretty much everybody who has accused Trump of, well, anything has been discredited. They were all, according to the FBI, well, lunatics. So that's some fun information. The most important thing, though, kind of proves a lot of stuff other than itself, kind of the world planning type of thing, is Zohran Mamdani's true origins. Now, we're going to talk about all of that next week in much more depth. But yeah, it's very interesting. There's pictures of Mamdani as a little baby in his mom's arms, next to Epstein. There's a picture of him as a toddler in his mom's arm, next to Epstein, and a young boy next to his mother and Epstein. Was he perhaps groomed? Was he perhaps a victim? My personal opinion, we're all victims of him. His, what was it, like 15 people frozen to death in New York City over the last week. They were certainly victims of him, but again, we'll get into that next week on a little bit of a longer episode. And to close this episode out, we have our Hero of the Week, which is a little bit kind of unorthodox, especially as we're sort of getting into this Epstein stuff. I would not be surprised if this fella is implicated in all this Epstein stuff. He's shown signs from both sides at different times. So he could be involved in all the, human sacrifice type of thing. And also he could be kind of trying to shout it out and let us know. Very interesting things from his past, like the Truman Show. If you don't know now, or if you didn't know before, you probably know now who I'm talking about. But the Truman Show is, it's one of those things that conspiracy theorists like myself have been saying for many, many years. They hide it in plain sight. For some reason, they seem to be forced to tell us what they're doing before they do it. Or perhaps during the time that they're doing it, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But they seem to be either forced to show us what they're doing, or they're just doing it to kind of say, go fuck yourself. This is what we're doing, and you can't stop us, kind of thing. I remember 2015, I think it was, my boss at a surf shop I worked at showed me some videos of Alex Jones talking about when he was still in the cloven hooves and lizard people phase. He was explaining this whole thing where they have to tell you what they're doing before they do it or whatever. It's compulsory kind of thing. It's in their rule book almost, something along those lines. But anyway, without further ado, here is a clip, a little older clip of our Hero of the Week, Jim Carrey.
It is the mark of a villain. Kidnapping children is not what great nations do.
Is that a gang sign? Have you...
Oh, like you don't know what it is. And I'm sick of it. I want everybody to be in on the joke, man. You know what I mean? For years now, talk show hosts, people on television, people in sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh and stuff like that, make you happy and docile so you don't know what's really going on. You know, when they get out there in the woods in a circle naked and they decide these things, and you know what they're trying to do? Who? This thing is buzzing. Hold on. They're trying to turn us into, consumer drones of some sort.
First off, Jimmy Kimmel, I kind of liked him a little bit when he was doing the Man Show. Back in that era, stupid things like that were just kind of funny. Nowadays, it boggles my mind how he's still part of that team and isn't canceled. It's the craziest thing ever. If you don't know the Man Show, go look it up. It was simply a comedy show for men. I mean, it wasn't really funny, but it was kind of like when you didn't have anything else to watch, you watched that. When nothing else was on and we didn't have streaming services, that's just sort of the thing you put on while you distracted yourself with poker or something like that. But what Jim Carrey is talking about here is very poignant, especially with all this Epstein stuff coming out. I thank you, Jim. Even if you are a part of this, if you've done horrible, horrible things, I still want you punished, just like you should be. But I do still have to offer you an ice cold Coors Banquet. I would love to invite you onto the show. Let's share a beer and we can talk about all this stuff. I'll tell you, we'll never air it. This is just for me. This camera's not actually recording. It's just so that we could look over and check our reflections or something like that. Of course, it'll be recording, but yeah, Jim Carrey, I'd love to pick your brain because you've clearly been through a lot. And you are, for The Truman Show, for this speech, and several other things, our hero of the week. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. God bless you. God bless this big, beautiful rock we live on. And we'll see you next week.